Hello and welcome everyone. So today we are going to discuss another topic on the InfoSec. It's Kerberos Authentication, and we are going to learn how it is used in the modern networks to verify the identity, how it generally is used in the authentication, and how it is exploited up by the hackers. Without waiting any further, let's dive into it. Kerberos is basically an authentication protocol that is used to verify the identity of a client to a server by using a secure way of authorization and a secure way of verification. So let's say you are sitting on a vulnerable network and an attacker might be intercepting your traffic. So in this case, your password easily be intercepted by an attacker. Your plain text would clearly be visible and the attacker would have the complete control over it. So in order to prevent it, it's best to not share the password when a client is communicating with the server. And for this purpose, there comes a protocol that's called Kerberos. It completely removes the requirement of using a password to prove the identity of the client to a server. It does by using tickets, which completely evades the possibility of an attacker even intercepting the traffic couldn't be able to verify as a client to the server. The Kerberos gets its name from Kerberos, which is basically in Greek stands for three-headed dog. And in the sense of security, it's three layers of authentication to prove the identity. The main benefits that Kerberos generally provides are that the passwords are never sent across the network. Even the attacker, if is generally intercepting the traffic between the client and the server, then he wouldn't be able to authenticate as the client because the passwords are not used for the authentication, and the encryption keys that are used during this authentication phase are also not directly exchanged in a plain text, which prevents the network eavesdropping, which is given to the attack, in which an attacker intercepts the network traffic between the client and the server. So basically, what exactly is Kerberos? It's basically a standard protocol that is used to provide secure authentication and generally used as a default authentication protocol. And when a user generally logs into their PC, the Kerberos is generally used to authenticate them via the manual authentication, or generally both the user and the server verify their identity. So Kerberos is basically a stateless authentication protocol that is based on tickets and overcoming the need of using the passwords to prove the identity. As clear by the name, there are three dogs in this protocol. One is the client, that is just a process that is accessing a service on the behalf of a user. And then we got a service itself, a file server or an app the user generally wants to access. And the top of on the right and the left, there on the top there is a dog, or we say the ultimate authority and having the most control is KDC. What exactly is KDC? Well, it's what we call the key distribution center, and it is the absolute heart of the Kerberos protocol. It securely stores the symmetric keys for every user and every service. The KDC is basically the one that issues the tickets. The KDC itself is split it up into two distinct separate servers. One is basically the authentication server, or in short AS, which generally confirms that a user that is known in the network or in the Active Directory is making the request to the KDC. And the other server is the ticket granting server, which is the TGS, and it confirms that the user that is making the request to KDC is generally asking for a service that is generally known or not in the Active Directory or in the network. So now let's discuss how this ticketing process in the Kerberos authentication generally works. It works by, yeah, let's say the client wants to access a particular service and he needs to access without giving the plain text, the password in the plain text, or using any type of mode of transfer that could be intercepted by an attacker. It does by sending a request to the key distribution center, the KDC, and the KDC has the two parts. One is the authentication server, which we discussed is responsible for verifying whether a user that is present in the Active Directory is making up the request or not. So the authentication server in the KDC verifies whether the user exists or not, and if the user exists, then on the step number two, it has the unique session key that it gives to the as that it gives or generates to the user that is making the request of long list of usernames, and look for the client. Let's say the client is Bob. It looks for the Bob username, and the authorization server in the KDC has a session key that it gives to the Bob user in the step number two after verifying that the user Bob exists in the Active Directory. or not. After verifying of the user's information, the key distribution center, the KDC, generally issues the ticket granting ticket, TGT in short, to the user. Now, the interesting fact about this TGT is that this is encrypted with the Bob's master key, which is derived from his salted password. The key distribution center generally has all the passwords of every user. The Bob station can actually decrypt it, but no other client or no other station can decrypt it. When the Bob generally decrypts this, he only gets the session key, and he actually cannot read the ticket granting ticket because the TGT is encrypted using the KDC's own secret key. Basically, one is the secret key of the KDC, and one is the known key of the Bob that is stored on the key distribution center, which is generally the password of the Bob. And generally, the timestamps both are used for the encryption. After the step number 2, the client sends this ticket granting ticket, which was issued by the key distribution center, again to the key distribution center, requesting up the ticket for the particular service that he wants to access. But now, this time on the key distribution center, the other server on the key distribution center we discussed that was which was the ticket granting server TGS, which generally validates the service. The ticket granting service, after validating, generally uses its own secret key to validate that the client can access that particular service, and then gives a response which is called TGS rep, and that reply generally contains everything the Bob needs in order to get that service. And at last, the user Bob can request the service by just sending out the request to the server. A quick overview of this entire ticketing process on the Kerberos authentication would be that the client that wants to access a particular service would send a request for a TGS to the KDC, and the KDC, the authorization server, the AS part on the KDC, generally validates the user, and after validating the user, it uses the Bob's encryption key. It could be either the password or the hash that would be that the KDC would be holding of the user Bob, and the specific the KDC secret key as well to encrypt, and that particular encrypted TGS is then given to the client. The client then sends a request to the KDC for validating, for generally using that particular service that he wants on the server. The KDC this time would be using the ticket granting server TGS to validate the service for the particular user, for the client, and that particular ticket granting server this time would be using the service that the user wants to access its key. It's usually the password or other secret that we can configure, and then after encrypting that both of those hashes or the passwords or the keys with timestamps, it then gives it to the client, and the client then can easily access the service to the server. Some interesting facts that I would to add on this Kerberos authentication protocol is that Kerberos generally accepts the tickets in the 2 minute difference. After 2 minutes, it does not accept the tickets. Another interesting fact is that Kerberos is generally working on the port number 88 for both TCP and UDP. And another interesting fact is that it does not need password during the communication. You just log in once, the domain controller or the KDC we say verifies the identity and issues the TGT, and then those tickets do generally all the work. So that's basically the Kerberos authentication protocol. I hope you understand it, and if you got to know anything interesting, please do give a and do give a subscribe. If anything was not clear, please leave a comment below. I would make sure to reply all of it. Thanks for watching.